you have when you're trying to convince your athletes like how important nutrition is and like how they're supposed to eat? Like, what's the biggest like thing that you have to fight against to get them to do what you want them to do?
I think it's a couple things, and they're not mutually exclusive. Like, I think obviously, just like anybody else, they have this knowledge of nutrition that they've got coming up through high school and college and those types of things. And so as a practitioner, you're always trying to sell them on what you want them to do. But that means you got to get them to stop doing what they're already doing. I mean, the hardest part for me is just all the social media stuff. You guys see it, right? Like the documentaries that come out, the social media posts, the influencers on Instagram and Twitter, and not that those things are bad. But there's just so much information. Some of it's false and some of it's not on nutrition. So like the players come to me for, they'll hear something from a friend or a family member or somebody on social media, and then they'll start doing it. So, hey, I heard this diet's good for athletes. So, hey, all of a sudden they'll come up to me like, hey, I've been doing this diet for the last week. You know what I mean? And so I think they just get they're overloaded with so much information and so many people in their ears. That's probably the biggest barrier, is always trying to like kind of bring people back to earth and try to bring them back down. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we lost you there for a second. So you just got done saying trying to bring them back down to earth. So
yeah, basically just trying to bring them back down to, because I obviously have a philosophy about nutrition and I guess about the targets that we're trying to go for. And sometimes they start adopting different things that aren't necessarily matching what I want them to do. So always just trying to educate them and at the same time meet them in the middle. You don't always want to be the person that's just shooting down every idea. And, with nutrition, I've kind of come to realize that, there's so many extremes and usually the truth lies somewhere in the middle, if that makes sense. And so you just don't want them to do anything extreme and changing their diet, mid-season just because they watched something or saw some information on Twitter or whatever. So that's probably the hardest thing is constantly trying to have them to educate and kind of fight off some false information.
Mike, can you maybe walk us through how you bring someone back down to earth? So like this actually happened to me this morning. Hey, I saw a documentary on Netflix about XYZ. What do you think?
Right.
How do you take that? Which is really interesting because it just goes to show that even pro athletes deal with this stuff. Athletes still see everything that everyone else sees. So how do you take that athlete kind of back down to earth, as you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned a good point is that they are athletes, and a lot of the information they see is really geared towards the general pop, and those are two different groups. You know what I mean? For example, sugar, right? Sugar's demonized. Obviously, I personally, my opinion is that there's nothing inherently bad about sugar, right? And we know that athletes, sugar can help, right? Especially around training and those types of things. Like general pop, like does the general population need to be crushing 60 grams of sugar before they work out? Probably not. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of where the context comes in. That's why an athlete will say, hey, I saw sugar was bad, or I saw XYZ causes inflammation. And then I always just basically try to answer your question is like, I try to lay out the science in a way they can understand. I try to make sure they understand that they're not, general population, that they are a very specialized population that has different demands. And then it's also important to me, as I kind of mentioned, is that I do want to meet them in the middle, though. So I don't always want to be the person that's just shooting down in ideas. And like I said, the truth usually lies somewhere in the middle. So usually there are messages that you can take away from certain things. Like, for example, the documentary that came out on veganism, right? Like, I got nothing against vegan diets. Like, I think everybody should be eating more plant-based foods, right? I mean, that's just a fact. Do I necessarily think meat is as bad as they portray? No. But that would be my message, right? If a guy comes to me as an example and says, hey, I'm going to go vegan because I saw the documentary Game Changers, basically I'll try to – maybe we can take some things away from that documentary. You know what I mean? Maybe you should eat more fiber and fruits and vegetables, and as we all should, right? Maybe you do limit red meat a couple times a week. I'm not sure. But, can we meet in the middle instead of me just saying, no, that's BS, none of that's true. Just do what I tell you to do. You know what I mean? And it happens a lot with even supplements too. So guys will bring supplements for me to look at, right? And obviously I love that they bring that because that means they trust me, trust my opinion. But most of the time they're BS. They're just like trash. But I can't just if I'm always just saying that's trash, they're just going to stop bringing me supplements. You know what I mean? So you got to like, hey, I think these are the ingredients I think, are good. These probably don't work as well. So you just got to like kind of learn how to talk to them a little bit so you don't rub them the wrong way.
I got a question for you. So what would you say would be the most crucial, I guess, characteristic of somebody trying to get in the field that like you can't develop? I have my personality standpoint. What would be the most important thing that you say kind of set you apart from somebody else trying to get in the industry?
Yeah, good question. I think a couple of things come to mind. First, I think more from like the hard skills standpoint is that I feel like I did have to teach myself a lot. Like I mentioned, so you have to be a self-learner. Like you have to be pretty internally driven to do that because you're not going to get, like you guys are in this class right now. That's great, right? There's only so much that Corey can give you from that standpoint. Like you're going to have to go out on your own and read and read and read. And that's something, like I said, I just kind of fell in love with it out of nowhere my junior year. And I just like couldn't stop learning. Like I just loved that process. So I think that's important because especially sports, because if you expect to go to school and get a formal education and then be ready to roll, that's going to be a little bit difficult where I feel like you probably need to put a little extra time in kind of that self-learning phase. In terms of soft skills, like I think the couple of things that come to me is you gotta be willing to move, just like anything in sports, as any type of coach or anything like that. If you're really stuck geographically in a space, that's great. But you're limiting yourself so much to the opportunities that you're gonna get. And I was just lucky enough to kind of be able to just go where the wind blew me. I was very supported by my family, and I was single at the time, and so all these things were kind of this perfect storm where I could just pick up and go. And I understand that not everybody's in that situation, but it definitely helps. And then finally, like once you're in an organization, I think, Corey knows Brett Bartholomew really well, but he talks about social agility. It's situational awareness. I mean, they're interchangeable, but you're going to have to be able to like read a room and understand how to act in certain situations, and the way you treat and act one player or staff member is very different than the other person. And so you got to be just very situationally aware. And I don't know if you can teach that or not. I think you kind of either have it or you don't, but that's just my opinion.
Well, thank you for that.
All right, other questions?
So I have another one, if you don't mind.
Yep.
What would be, I guess, the most challenging thing that you face like day in, day out working with pro athletes? Like because I know there's got to be some guys got to have different kind of attitudes than other guys do. Like, is that the thing that's the hardest to get them to like listen to you and like break away from their old habits, or is that like?
Yeah, I would say kind of alluding back to my other point about that kind of situational awareness is that we have guys across the whole spectrum. We have guys over here on the far left that just don't care about nutrition or training and that. And some of you, it's probably hard to believe. There's just some dudes that just had been so genetically gifted their whole lives that they haven't really had to worry about any of that stuff. So they don't understand the connection. You know what I mean? They've never had that aha moment where they trained or they ate a certain way for a long time and got results. They've always just got results. And so you got guys over there, obviously, that I would love to affect, but they're just in a different space. You know what I mean? Like, that's just going to be hard. You kind of got to wait for those guys. Then you got kind of guys in the middle that really they're willing to, they are willing to learn. They just don't know anything about it. And those are kind of the guys, they're fun to work with, but it's a challenge. And then you got guys on the far right that are like obsessive about it, almost sometimes too obsessive about it, right? Where they're thinking about everything, overthinking things. They're worried about the small things, right? Kind of talk about the pyramid with the foundation at the bottom and all the extra at the top. They're going top down. But again, those guys are also like, I wish everybody kind of had that interest in nutrition and training and those types of things. So I guess the most challenging point to kind of bring it full circle is just trying to figure out where guys are on the spectrum, and then just kind of figuring out what you can do from there. And obviously it's challenging when you got the guys that don't care. Obviously that, I take that personal and that bothers me, but at the same time, you kind of just can do what you can do. And it's also hard because our roster is it's overturned so often. So you might think you have this group figured out, and now you've kind of like scoped who your guys are on the left, middle, right, and then all of a sudden your roster just completely turns. You get new guys in, those guys get out, then you got to like take time to assess the whole situation again.
Do you communicate with like other nutrition coaches from other guys? Like say you guys have like a mid-season trade or something like that, somebody comes over to you guys. Do you like communicate with their past nutrition coach and strength coach and see what they're on, or just kind of assessment?
Sometimes. I would say sometimes we do. Like our head strength coach is really good at reaching out to the strength, their strength staff, just kind of getting a good read for them. There's been a few occasions where I've reached out to the nutritionist, but usually I'll just talk to them. We do an assessment when they first come in. So we get their body weight, we body comp them, we set a goal body weight for them. So we have time to sit down and kind of onboard them is what we call it, where we kind of educate them about the resources we have available. So you can get a pretty good feel about kind of some of their knowledge they've had in the past and, what they thought of the nutrition program from where they're coming from, and did they have a nutritionist in college and things like that. So sometimes, and then it just takes a little time, like I said, to just assess and see where they're at. But you can usually get a pretty idea from that initial assessment.
So what do you all get to control, like for nutrition for your athletes? Like you don't prepare meals, like do you meal plans or like supplement, like suggestions or?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that is kind of one of my biggest things is like control what you can control, because these are grown men, and we always say it's big boy rules in NFL, that's why it's so different than college. It's hard to mandate anything with these guys, you know what I mean? Like in college, like, I'm sure it's like that for the football guys where you have to check in at meals and, you know what I mean? I don't know if it is or it isn't, but you just can't do that in the NFL. So I just try to control what I can control. So the way we source our food, the oils we use in the food, our menus, what ingredients we're putting in their shakes, like you said, what supplements we have available. I'm just trying to control the controllables, you know what I mean? And then all that other stuff can kind of sort itself out. But the menus, whether it's at home or on the road, like I said, we do meal plans for guys. We do pre-made meals for certain guys to take home. So we obviously control all that. Like I said, we do nutrient timing wise, we do custom, recovery shakes and all that type of good stuff. And so we can control what goes into those. So that's what I'm saying. If we can control 75% of the stuff they put in their bodies, then at least we're doing that. And then if they go home and go to Chick-fil-A, then they go to Chick-fil-A. Nothing wrong with Chick-fil-A either. I'm just saying.
So, Mike, what are the couple maybe biggest variables when you are trying to personalize someone's nutrition plan? Like we talked about, personalized recovery shakes or things like that in meal plans.
Yeah.
Are you personalizing? Is it just the macronutrients, or what are some of the biggest factors that you manipulate?
Yeah. I think it depends on the person. It depends on how ready they are. I mean, we'll have guys that they want nutrition plans with the macronutrients laid out, and they want to track it on MyFitnessPal. And we have all that information. We have like little nutrition labels above all of our foods that have a barcode scanner that they can scan into the MyFitnessPal app, which is pretty cool. But obviously not every guy's there. I would say that's the minority, right? You got some guys that they literally just want to know what to eat every day, right? Where some guys want to be a little more flexible, be able to count their macros and those types of things. And then some guys just want it in the middle. So it really depends on because like it's funny because in school you learn about, the whole counseling process, right? You feel like the guy's going to come in and you're going to go over a SOAP note, right? Subjective information, objective information, assessment, right? It's like in the weight room, like, hey, dude, I need a meal plan. You know what I mean? It's like, so then it's up to you to be like, what does that mean? What does it mean? What does it mean for that athlete? Does he want like a macronutrient breakdown? or does he literally just want me to tell him what to eat? You know what I mean? And so that's kind of where knowing your athletes and knowing where they're at comes in. But obviously, you know, when it comes down to it, the way we do it is, you know, we have their body weights, we have their body composition, we have all their anthropometric data. So we can usually, you know, we'll just guesstimate kind of what their, you know, energy needs are. We'll see if are they overweight, over their goal weight a lot? Are they under their goal weight a lot? So do they need to lose, gain, maintain, those types of things? So we'll take all that stuff into consideration. But like I said, when it comes to the end of the day, it's really where the player's at. And then that's kind of how we'll address it. So, you know, some guys, they want us to go down with them and walk them through. And so it's just, there's different levels. Some of them want it pre-made. Like a lot of guys just literally want us to pre-package it up and they just pick it up. They don't even have to think about it.
I got another question for you, more towards like the strength conditioning part of it. What is like a normal in-season week like for you guys as far as like weight room? Like how long are you guys in there? What kind of stuff are you guys doing in the weight room during season?
So we do, I know it's a little bit different team to team, but we do 2 lifts a week and we go Tuesday, Thursday. So our players have Mondays off, or I guess just if a game's on a Sunday, they'll have Mondays off. So we'll lift as a team on Tuesday and then we'll lift as a team on Thursday. Usually the Tuesday lift is going to be our bigger lift. So that's going to be our lower body work for the most part. Then Thursday is going to be predominantly upper body with just maybe a little bit of taste of lower. And we do, you know, Tuesday, all they have to do on Tuesdays is lift and meet. So there's no practice or anything like that. So that's why we feel like we can get some really good work from them on Tuesdays. Thursday they practice. So that's, like I said, that's kind of why we went upper body for the most part there. But they practice, they basically lift in the morning before practice. Some guys will elect to come after practice. You know, some guys come in to lift on Mondays. So really it's like Tuesday, Thursday is what we have set. But then again, we try to accommodate as well as possible. If certain guys like we had probably 7 guys come and lift today. They just want to come in and do the Tuesday lift on Monday, and that's fine. Because a lot of guys come from team, you know, they're so amped up from the game on Sunday still that a lot of those guys don't really necessarily feel sore till Tuesday. So a lot of guys want to come in and just knock their lifts out on Monday when they're still feeling pretty good. So.
How does that compare to the off season then?
So the off-season piece, we live 4 times a week, because obviously that's kind of the, you know, that's the emphasis during that time. It's more the weight room that work. So the first 2 weeks we get them, it's all us. It's literally all us every day. So we have a lift, you know, we lift and we run Monday through Thursday. We have each group for like 2 hours. And then after that, we lose that running time. They start doing some field work, but then we're lifting. We have like an hour and a half in there lifting. But that's really our time to build the foundation of strength and guys working on body composition and things like that. That's where 4 times a week. That's really where we can emphasize a lot of that stuff. So that continues through the whole off season. And as we kind of go through the off season, they start practicing more and more. But again, it's not full pads and it's pretty controlled. We got a lot of guys, you know, we got a big number of guys. So we're not necessarily as worried about, you know, the loads on the field and things like that during the season. So in the off season, so we still feel like we can push them pretty good in the weight room during the whole off season.
Have you noticed any differences with like really high level athletes? You've primarily been NFL, like Division I college. If you want to implement some kind of change with them, would that be like weight gain, weight loss? Have you noticed any differences in how high level athletes adapt to those changes that you implement and lower level athletes? Just kind of physiologically, is there any kind of difference there that you've noticed?
I think, I don't know, you know, genetics is such a big, like, driver of that, right? There's a saying that goes, genetics loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger. I think it's how it goes. I don't know if I butchered that or not, but so there's guys here that, you know, we have a guy, for example, that'll come in. So he's a linebacker. He's supposed to weigh around 235, 240. He'll come in off the offseason at 215 every year. And he'll literally, and I'm not kidding, be 235 in like 2 weeks with just pure, he's like 7% body fat. And it's just like it goes beyond what you've learned in school. And you know what I mean? Like there's certain guys that are just freaks where he could literally do anything. He could eat anything he wanted, and he'll be like that. And then you got some guys that just they struggle. I mean, they struggle even though they're elite athletes. They struggle just like they're not. You got guys that really struggle to lose weight. You got guys that struggle to gain weight. So I think it's across the board. Some guys respond, like I said, that guy responds very well to anything. It makes you look like a pro, right? Linebacker coach come to me and say, hey, we need to put weight on this guy. I'm like, all right, that'll be, I'll take credit for that. But then you got guys that you're struggling. We got guys that are developmental guys that still trying to gain 4 pounds. You know what I mean? It's just like an ongoing something that seems so simple. It's just they got so much noise in their head, and I'm not trying to make excuses for them, but a lot of guys just struggle to, to do what you want them to do from that standpoint.
With regards to football, what do you think is like the biggest need or thing that football players forget to do, like in nutrition-wise, that they should be doing, but they just don't do usually?
That's a good question. I guess I would say like, a lot of guys really don't necessarily understand, I guess one of the ways that they fight back a little bit is through their goal body weights, right? So a lot of guys don't understand the connection between being at a certain weight or a body comp, body fat. For example, like when you got O-line or D-line guys that are, 330 and 25% body fat, like to them, that's cool, right? Like they've been doing it their whole life. And, that's where they feel like they should be. But obviously as a performance practitioner and things like that, we want them to be maybe a little bit less body fat and be in their goal weight range and those types of things. So I do think guys overlook that part of things. Even some of our skill guys that are, got running backs that are 14%, 15% body fat. Is like, could their performance improve if they were 12, 11%? Maybe. I'd like to think it would, you know what I mean? But to them, it's kind of like, it's how I've always been. And I don't really necessarily feel like that's going to help. You know what I mean? So that's a really good question. I'm sure if I thought about that a little bit longer, I could have a better answer for you, but that's kind of what comes off my head. I would say sleep. I know it's not nutrition related, but I think we can all agree that that's one of the overlooked fundamentals. And the pro guys are just as bad as the college guys.
What do you find yourself always harping on? Like, what do you find yourself like, this is really important, you guys, like, we need to keep on this, we need to keep this top of mind. Like, what do you find yourself always harping on?
That's a good question. I would say in season, a lot of like the nutrient, like around the game, like, so right before the game. So we'll go off, we know how important nutrient timing is, pre, during, post. And so, they'll go do a warm up. We have all sorts of stuff in the locker room and those types of things for games. So guys will come in, they might be amped up, and then at halftime you want them to do something. They might be all pissed off because they missed a block, or now we're losing and now they don't want to do anything. You know what I mean? So we're always like, all right, get something in the tank. Like always preaching about, right before the game, halftime, during the game, because their mind is so far away from that during that time that it's really like we're always having to remind them. Like you think they'd be in a habit, but they're like literally like don't think about anything else but the game. So you have to be in their face like at halftime and those types of things. I have like a fueling sheet basically that I keep track of, and I just remember what guys want, and I'll just go give it to them because they're not gonna, like I said, they don't even think about it when they come in. I wish they would, but so that's probably the one that pops to my head the most. Is we're always, just because it was yesterday, like we're just always harping, put something in the tank, hydrate, fuel up, like do something, because they don't eat, they eat a meal 4 hours before the game. So like yesterday, they had the pregame meal at 8:30, 9 a.m., and then the game gets over at 4 something. So you got guys maybe that didn't eat at all during that time. That's not good.
Has there been anything unique to come out regarding like competition nutrition? Because it's always so focused on carbohydrates, right? And has there anything that you've seen recently that's changed in that area at all? Or has it stayed pretty much the same and it's still very carb focused? Or like what kind of do you want to see in a perfect world and maybe during the game?
Yeah, I would say the emphasis is still pretty carb focused. For me, it's really like get something in. And for me, it's about efficiency too. So obviously hydration, fluids, electrolytes, and then carbohydrate, sugar. Those are the kind of the two most important things around training, during training. So if we can kill all those birds with one stone, that's what we'll do, So the hydration product that we use has sugar in it, right? So if I can get one guy to drink a 12-ounce serving of the hydration product we use, they'll get fluids, they'll get carbohydrate, they'll get sodium, get chloride, right? They get everything. Instead of having like a banana and then a water and then I got to add this electrolyte, you know what I mean? Because like I said, you're trying to be efficient and have the least amount of steps possible. But at the same time, some guys just don't want to eat anything. They don't want anything. So it's like, so I love the recommendations for pre, during, post, the 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour and those types of things, but it's really not practical in my opinion. It's get as much in as you can. If you can do a bar, get a bar. If you can do a banana, do a banana. If you can do a Gatorade, do a Gatorade. Just try to get something in. So that's what I would say from that. And then in terms of, I don't necessarily think anything has really developed. I say like caffeine is a big one that, obviously that's not a new topic, but I think caffeine at halftime is something that's proposed as but like practical application, I'm not sure what that looks like. We have gels that have caffeine in them, but like it's like 100 milligrams of caffeine, which is probably not high enough. Like, so do you start giving guys pre-workouts at halftime? Do you give guys caffeine pills at halftime? And I'm really asking because I don't really know. Like I said, there's some stuff that comes out, and you're like practical application wise, I'm not sure how we would implement that. But yeah, I would say fluids and sugar, electrolytes. I mean, that's what I've seen, unless I've missed something. Around immediately pre and immediately and during.
So then recovery wise, what do you recommend for your guys, like dosage wise, like after they finish the game, like what do you like want them to see? What do you want them to see? What do you want to see them eating?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say recovery after a game is the same as recovery after practice or a lift or anything like that. I mean, obviously protein is your main one. I'm a fan of more protein. A lot of the research I've seen and that type of thing is like, I think our guys, probably for how big they are, could go anywhere from 30 to 50 grams of protein post to be safe. And so we have like, some RTDs that have 40 grams of protein in them. We'll do shakes that have, we'll do 2 scoops of protein, so 40 grams. And then obviously carbohydrate can help. I don't necessarily think carbohydrate, you have to get a bunch of carbohydrate right after, especially because if you think about our game, we'll be done and then they won't even have another activity till Tuesday. So if they can't replenish glycogen by Tuesday, that's a problem, Whereas if they had to come back the next day or something and do something, then obviously the timing of the carbohydrates is a little bit more important to me. But when we're at the facility, we'll obviously put carbohydrate in the form of fruit and milks and maybe even some carbohydrate powders and things like that in the post, just to, like I said, we can control. And then game day, we'll do have RTDs, but really we have a post-game meal. And so we always just try to plan a really good post-game meal, like a buffet. I think we do a really good job of we have a lot of support in terms of financials to do a really nice post-game meal instead of just like a boxed sandwich that most people do. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just like having the guys' ability to pick and choose what they want. So, like yesterday we did a taco bar, so it's almost like a Qdoba bar or Chipotle where they can build rice and beans and chicken or meat or shrimp and build a salad or whatever. So just having a pretty robust post-game meal, just because that is a pretty big time for recovery right there. And then we have food on the airplane. I mean, we got so many options for guys that at least the guys are getting something. And then you have some of the specialty products like, the cherry juices and things like that, turmerics that can be useful during those times for certain people.
How do you explain to your athletes how much is like 20 grams of protein, or 30 grams? Like if they're like not with you, like how do you tell them like this is how to tell if it's like 30 grams, 40 grams of protein?
Yeah, I mean, obviously like in the shakes and things like that, then that's kind of predetermined. That's pretty easy. Like at meals, We try to show them some different there's so many images on there that you can show. For example, like the palm of your hand is 3 ounces or whatever that be. You know what I mean? Even though they have a giant hand, so it's probably not the same. But my message on protein is always, I would rather them overdo it than underdo it. So I'm always saying, like, if you're in doubt at all, I just eat more protein. Just because I don't really think there's like necessarily a con to overeating protein for these guys. So I guess to answer your question is like, I'm just not too worried that they're not getting enough, if that makes sense. Because I always just tell them to try to aim for more. If they're hungry after they eat, just eat more protein.
Do the players specifically use your guys' services, so your guys' strength conditioning, your guys' nutrition, or can they go outside and look for other guys to like supplement with? Or
yeah, most guys have another strength coach or trainer for the off season, because a lot of guys, and we don't take it personal, but a lot of guys want to get the hell out of Philadelphia in the winter. You know what I mean? And so guys, they either go to Texas, they go to California, they go to Florida. And I don't blame them. I would do the same thing if I was them. So a lot of guys have trainers that they've been working with since they were in high school and college, and they'll go work with them in the off season for the most part. Nutrition-wise, I wouldn't necessarily say that guys like have like a certain nutritionist as much as a trainer, but usually that trainer kind of acts as both. In terms of in season, I mean, they can do whatever they want to an extent, you know what I mean? But I would say that majority of them will just use our services just because it's convenient. But I mean, that being said, there are guys that consult with other guys outside, whether it's nutrition or strength and conditioning and those types of things that are giving them extra plans and stuff like that. And we try to embrace that. And actually, Josh, our head strength coach, is really, really good at, and as Corey knows, but just like the collaboration with, instead of him feeling like we have an ego and it's us against them, he's very open and wants to meet them and wants to get on their same page as them. And sometimes we even invite them in and those types of things. And so I think we do a really good job of trying to bridge the gap there. So it's not like us versus them. We can actually communicate and get some guy, get the guy with the best care that they want. Because we've had guys in the past that, don't want to lift and kind of being an issue. We reach out to the guy that trains them in the off season and they say, oh yeah, just do these, these exercises. We do these a lot in the off season. And that's a big win for us if we can say that we're communicating with them and doing the exercises that they're used to.
Mike, so earlier you mentioned doing some body count testing. Do you have any specific criteria that you use to determine like maybe a player's ideal playing weight or maybe body comp or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, for body weight, so we actually have have you ever heard of a frame score, Corey? So we kind of have it's like a little bit of a proprietary thing that we do is basically we get a lot of anthropometric data from the combine. So wingspan, height, wrist size, knee size, length of arm, a bunch of stuff. And we have like this analytics department that basically sends me something every year where they basically look at starters in the league and their frame is what we call it. So it kind of goes into this equation. We call it a frame score. And basically what we're doing essentially is just comparing a guy's frame to other starters at their position that had that same frame. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
So that's a kind of a starting point where we use to just at least project guys when they come in. So if you have a 8-year starter at DN that's been playing at 265 and he has a frame of 20, and then you got a new guy come in that has a frame of 20 and he's like 255 or whatever, you can maybe make an assumption based on body comp that he could potentially be at 265, right? But that being said, then we also take into consideration body comp. So if that guy that I just alluded to is 255, but he's 30% body fat, I'm not going to ask the guy to gain 10 pounds. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where context comes in and a little bit of you kind of using both tools. Body comp wise, we used to do the calipers. Obviously, like I love the DEXA. I wish we could do the DEXA. It's just not practical for us. It just takes too long. we do our body comps, it's really on a report day. So when guys come in April for the off season, I body comp 90 guys in like 2.5 hours. Whereas at DEXA, I would be body comping guys for 3 weeks. So that's kind of where we find. Obviously, do I think the DEXA is probably a little bit better? Yes, but it's just not practical. So we do the skin folds, and we feel like I said, as you guys probably know, like it's really user error. So like if I'm always doing the skin folds, my error should hopefully be similar from time to time. So whether I'm right on, that's debatable, but at least the trend should be pretty accurate. So we do that, and then we do have like goal. So every guy gets a goal body weight, a 5-pound goal body weight. Like I said, we'll base it off that, some of the frame, the body comp. It's always a discussion too. It's not a perfect system. You might have guys that get set at a certain weight and then they ended up losing or gaining more and they're doing well. They feel good. The coaches like where they're at. Then we'll just change the weight. We always say it's written in sand, not cement. And then, yeah, from the body comp standpoint, we do have ranges that we feel like are good. I kind of just pulled it together based on some literature out there, but it's pretty subjective as well. So I can't sit here and say that it's the greatest metric there are, but we're pretty comfortable with kind of where we want guys to be from a body fat standpoint.
What's the biggest misconception that your athletes have about their nutrition?
I think it's like kind of going back to that question a long time ago. It's just like some of the information that comes out. So a lot of guys, they'll hear sugar is bad and they don't eat sugar. And that can obviously be problematic, depending on your stance on it. I guess some of you guys, maybe you disagree, but, and that's fine. Some of that information can hurt, right? So like, for example, our hydration product is high in sugar. But our hydration product is awesome. It has really, really high levels of sodium and chloride. You do need sugar for proper absorption. But some guys will be like, oh my gosh, there's X amount of sugar. Like I can't drink this. So now their hydration is getting, is hindered for this belief that they have about a nutrient. Does that make sense? So I think it's always but it always changes. It always changes. It'll be sugar, and then it'll be gluten, and then it'll be milk, and then it'll be something else. So then they always change their behaviors based on some information that they heard. And so I don't think it's one thing that's always popping up. I feel like it's always changing based on what's popular in kind of like the popular media. I would say sugar is one that comes up time and time again.
Okay, we got time for one, maybe two questions. So football guys, if you got anything? Yeah, maybe one, maybe two more questions.
For guys that you would say are picky eaters, how would you help them bridge the gap into like getting into more fruits and vegetables and stuff like that? Just little by little, or is there anything from your experience that helped?
Yeah, I think the old tale of basically if you can blend it and put it in a shake form or something, that's kind of the old school way of doing it. And it works. Like guys are much willing to chug something they don't like than eat it. And I always have a phrase like purpose and not pleasure on that. So we try to do that if guys are really lacking on that. But sometimes it's honestly, man, like a lot of guys just their taste just changes, like their palate changes over time. Where they might come in as a rookie and they're like all they eat is burgers and French fries or whatever, and then obviously by year 5, year 6 they might be eating salads for lunch every day, and I think it just develops over time. Some guys really end up enjoying those foods, and some guys, like I said, purpose and not pleasure. Some guys eat it because they feel like it helps them. And so I don't think there's any like super secret ways or anything to try to get them to eat more like that. Like I was a picky eater growing up, and then now my palate has developed over time. And it just kind of happened that way. I'm not sure why.
Okay, we're doing it final. We got about 2 minutes left. Any quick questions from anyone? Scott, they want to ask Mike?
I will say, if there's not another question, I will say what's kind of coming down the pipeline that if everybody should kind of keep their ear to the street is like all this talk about like the gut the gut microbiome and that type of thing. I think that's really the future in sports nutrition, and we kind of call it precision nutrition. Is I think the analysis of the microbiome and then what we can do about it, I think is like, we'll be hearing a lot about that as we get going. And that's, I guess I said that because that's an area that I'm really interested in right now.
You guys currently do anything with that, or is it like, do you have recommendations for your athletes on that, or do you supply anything regarding probiotic supplementation or anything?
Yeah, we do probiotics, but again, it's like, it's a debatable topic. Some people say a generic probiotic can do more harm than good, and some people say everyone should be on a probiotic. I'm more in the line of, I think probably doing a probiotic is going to be better than worse, even if it's generic. We have kombucha on tap, which is high in probiotics. So we try to do some things like that. We do work with a company right now out of California that does some analysis. So basically, you give them a fecal sample. They look at it, they analyze it, they show you your top 10 bacterias and good bacteria, bad bacteria, things like that. But again, that's like in the infancy. A lot of people, I don't know. It's just, I don't know if it's ready for prime time yet. You know what I mean? But we're really doing more pilot stuff with our staff in terms of that analysis part of it. But I would say in general, if you eat more fiber, because that's what we kind of deem like prebiotics. So if you eat more fiber, more fruits and vegetables, whole grains, if you try to limit, avoid antibiotics, which I know is not always easy, antacids, NSAIDs, ibuprofens, and things like that, not abusing those. Obviously alcohol. Really, it's just like really good nutrition. You know what I mean? That's what helps the gut the most. Like I said, high fiber, low added sugars, those types of things. There is some stuff on, animal protein, specifically red meat. And I'm from Kansas, so I grew up on red meat and I love red meat. But do I think it's maybe a good idea to not eat red meat every day? Probably. Just from some of the stuff on what's coming out on the gut.
Interesting.
But yeah, fiber. I think fiber is the name of the game. Like, I think the average person eats 15 grams of fiber. I think the recommendation is 35 grams of fiber, 40 grams of fiber a day. I mean, there's people over in some different countries and stuff that eat like 140, 150 grams of fiber a day that have great guts. They're kind of doing some sample stuff over some overseas stuff, but I think all of us could eat more fiber. I guess that'd be my takeaway on the gut.
Awesome. Well, that's it. That's all the time we got. We gotta get these guys out of here. So thanks, Mike.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
Bet.
Appreciate y'all. See you later.
Yeah.